When last we left our intrepid adventurers, Marcus had accidentally killed his wife, and the hidden paladin was saved. As the boat pulls up to the shore, it seems that Paladin Henry hasn't left yet. They meet him at the waterline, and as they leave the boat, it sinks back into the water. Henry knows there's something wrong, but he doesn't question them. On the way to the temple, they discuss ways to revive Priestess Tanis. They attempt to take her into the temple, but blue lightning crackles and spits around the helmet. They elect to leave the helmet outside and take her head and body in. Paladin Henry, who's not a follower of the Lady Chaldasea, elects to stay outside with the helmet. At first he covers it with a blanket. He notices that the helmet seems to move around under its own accord underneath the covering. It also appears to change shape, and it makes odd breathing sounds. Henry calls for somebody in the party to come and help him. He says that the helmet's doing strange things. They come outside, and Morgan takes a look at the helmet and decides it needs to be destroyed. She summons up the lady's power, and the helmet is consumed in a bolt of blue flame. Tired, the party goes their separate ways to try and get some rest before taking up the challenge again. They send word to Kenajun that they will need to get a wagon to take the body of Tanis back to Brightwater, which is her home. And Morgan begins composing a letter to her husband Isaiah, the Red, and Tanis' sister Estrella about Tanis' death. Paladin Faramir and his son say their goodbyes. They thank the party for their help and show their regret that Tanis was killed. The two paladins are going to the west to see if they can help the cause of the Lady Chaldasea from there. Kebradain and Scala bed down at the temple. Marcus and Henry go and have several stiff drinks with Akai. Seraph goes back to the village inn and finds Lissa waiting for him. Morgan keeps a vigil for her daughter. The next morning, most of the party returns to the temple. They find that Priestess Tanis is lying in a bed and talking to her mother. Her head has been reattached. She tells the party that this is only temporary. She will not be coming back to them because despite the fact that she was an unwilling prisoner of the Dark Lady, she began to feel the taint of darkness on her soul, and if she came back, she was not sure if she would be strong enough to resist it. Tanis tells Marcus that she will miss him, but will continue to love him and wait for him in the Lady Chaldasea's realm. She tells him to pity Van Cherie, who had not originally sought to become evil, but had accidentally been drawn down the dark path and was now firmly in its thrall. Tanis says she understands what has happened to Van Cherie based on what has happened to her. She says goodbye as well to her mother Morgan and asks her mother to remember her to her father Isaiah and her sister, and then she is taken to heaven by the blue light of Chaldasea. Many in the party are emotional at Tanis' leaving. Paladin Henry says it is time for him now to leave, though it grieves him not to be able to help more. Marcus thanks Henry, calls him brother, and then Henry leaves and is never seen again. Kebradain spends the day writing to his master about all the things he's seen. Akai ponders, asking another question of the goddess. Lissa and Seraph spend most of the day together. Lissa leaves later in the day and goes to talk to Scala about financial matters. In the evening, Morgan decides to spend the night with her novits in the Temple of Chaldasea. That night, Akai is out and about, giving prayers to the Grey Mother, which is the ancient form of the goddess Marcia. She's just at the edge of the water, and she notices some moving lights just under the surface and just offshore. She wades out a bit, and she finds a person wrapped up in a net made out of kelp. As she's freeing the person from this net, she's set upon by 3 water beasts, similar to the ones that attacked them on their way over to Sylvia's Rest. Between Akai and the person who is freeing themselves from the net, they manage to drive off and kill some of the creatures. The person in the net has been stabbed by one of the thing's tridents and is having trouble breathing. Despite her own wounds, Akai picks up the newcomer and heads straight for the temple. She knocks on the door with her boot, kicking it aside since she's encumbered by the person in the net. Once inside, Akai relates what she saw, while Morgan uses the power of the lady to drive the poison from the man. The person introduces himself as Magnus, a sorcerer from another world. He says his ship has been destroyed by some kind of monster that brought him to this world. Morgan and Akai figure out that Magnus and the ship's crew were probably victims of the Sea Gate in the far north. They decide that they should go and warn the manor about the sea creatures. Morgan tells the novits to lock the temple doors and not open them for anyone. Meanwhile, in the port bar, Paladin Marcus is awoken by a strange sound coming from the floor of his rented room. It sounds like someone is tapping and sawing beneath him. Marcus is curious. He puts on his armor and heads out of the bar just in time to see the pilings give way on part of the bar and watch as it crashes into the harbor. People begin streaming out of the bar, and Marcus meets up with Akai, Morgan, and Magnus. The 4 of them head up to the manor. Seraph and Lissa are awoken by Marcus pounding on their door at the village inn. Seraph dresses quickly and follows the rest of the party up the hill. Scala, who was staying at the fortress, is awoken by the sound of soldiers running around the manor. She gets up and questions the nearest altman, who seem to have no idea what's going on. Scala goes to the battlements of the fortress, and looking down at the village and the docks beyond, she sees that several buildings near the coast are on fire, and a boat in the harbor is ablaze. There are also small boats ferrying sheesh from a black ship beyond the breakwater. Marcus, Akai, and Magnus are going up the hill to the fortress. From what they can see, it doesn't seem to be in danger. Suddenly, there's an explosion from behind them. They look and see. The explosion's coming from where the temple stood. A gout of fire raises into the sky. The party changes directions. They all hurry back down the hill towards the temple. While heading towards the temple, they come across a fierce melee in the streets, citizens fighting a mixture of water creatures and sheesh. Marcus, Magnus, and Akai decide to stay behind and help the villagers out. Morgan and Seraph continue to the temple. As Morgan and Seraph arise, they see that the temple is all ablaze. A roaring fire burns like a demon. And the bodies of 2 of the novits lay still on the ground, and a bucket brigade of villagers pour water onto the temple as best they can. Back at the bar, the melee continues. It's a swirling fight, and no quarter is asked or given. Marcus, with the help of the others, beats back the invaders towards the rowboats that the Sheesh came in. Suddenly, he feels a great evil pass over him towards the manor. He yells to his comrades to follow, and he makes his way back up the hill. At the temple, the villagers have helped put out the fire. One of the novits is dead, another is injured, but no one can find the body of Mary. Morgan and Seraph continue to search for her body. Arriving back at the manor, the three, Marcus, Akai, and Magnus, inside the courtyard, they find still bodies. All of the Altmen apparently have been slaughtered. A black mist hangs over the buildings. With Paladin Marcus in the lead, they enter the great house. Everything is quiet, and there's a tinge of frost that hangs off of everything. They make their way up the stairs, boots splashing in the puddles of black water that cover the floor. Upon reaching the landing, they hear the sounds of footsteps on the lower passageway. On the floor below them, with capes that float like shadows around them, stand a trio of death masters, creatures of the dragon ring. The shades jump up to where Marcus and the group are and strike. One of them rears back and hits Marcus with a bolt of power that staggers him, and then the battle is joined. Two of the other ones engage the Paladin in hand-to-hand combat, while one chases Magnus and Akai down the hallway. The touch of these undead can be lethal, but the Paladin's sword is consecrated to the Lady Chaldasea, who is anathema to undead. Marcus blocks the creature's blows, and his counterattacks send the dead flesh screaming back into the realm of unlife. He stalks down the hall after the thing that chased Magnus and Akai. Expecting the worst, he opens the door to a room that was a chapel to the Lady Chaldasea. Inside are his friends King Jun and about 15 soldiers. Suddenly, with a shriek, the last Death Master attacks from behind a door. Marcus turns quickly and dispatches it. The threat eliminated, all of the soldiers and Jun slowly walk out of the room. Marcus can tell that Jun is horrified at the number of soldiers that gave their lives so that Jun and the others could reach the chapel. As dawn comes up over Sylvia's rest, the villagers are busy burying the dead and burning the Sheesh that have been killed. What had happened was that the Sheesh broke down the door and carried off Novit Mary before putting the temple to the torch. The party goes to a secluded spot and talks it over. None of the invading ships escaped, and scouts are checking the area looking for survivors. It's decided that they should use scrying to find Mary. Keberdane and Scala spend several minutes looking for the girl. It turns out they find her. She is indeed alive in an air-filled cavern underwater. Morgan says some words for her safety. Scala attempts to teleport to the girl, but is repulsed by some sort of warding. The party was left with a dilemma. They could see her, but they didn't know where she was. The party heads back into town to get some rest, hoping they'll have better ideas after getting some sleep. Akai decides to try something down at the water's edge. She tries to use the power of the Grey Lady to see if she could find Mary. Akai uses a ritual and summons some sharks to question them. When they appear, she is mocked by the beasts for not being in the water when she tried to call them. They say that she could never be a true follower of the Grey Lady if she was afraid of the Great Mother's messengers. Akai nods and strips off her clothes and wades into the water to show the sharks that she has no fear. The sharks say that they will return the following day with what information they can find. One of the sharks recommends that Akai join them swimming in the deep for some hunting. For a second, Akai feels herself start to shift into shark shape, but at the last moment she's able to resist the call of the Great Mother. Confused as to what almost happened, Akai puts her clothes back on and heads to the village inn. Next time, are there more troops from the north on their way for an invasion? And will Akai assume shark shape? And will she be able to change back?